Hello, everyone. This is Joy from the Joy of SharePoint. We're going to get started officially here in just about another minute. This is your last chance to run and get some caffeine, because remember, you can't do SharePoint without caffeine. I have my cup of hotel coffee right here. Today's webinar is coming from beautiful San Diego, California. It's especially beautiful because I flew in from Michigan last night, so I am enjoying the warm weather and not the snow. Yay! Okay, I am showing it is time to start. So again, welcome. My name is Joy Apple. I am the Joy of SharePoint. And today I am kicking off a series that I'm going to be doing both webinars and blogs on called This is the Way. And of course, if you are following or keeping track of the Star Wars universe in any way whatsoever, or have any kind of social media account at all, and have seen the Baby Yoda memes that have been way more successful than Kim Kardashian ever was at breaking the internet, then you're probably somewhat familiar with the fact that there is a great show out there called The Mandalorian. And I'm not sure what this says about me, but when I was watching one of the episodes, probably halfway through the season, my husband and I actually, okay, it's tonight. The new episode is on tonight. We got to watch it. But one of the times the phrase, "this is the way," was spoken, my brain immediately went to best practices with Microsoft 365, specifically around SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, because that's my particular focus. Office 365 is what we call that suite of products. You know, there is a way. There's a good way to do things, there's a bad way to do things, and then there is a way where we would say, this is the way to do it. So I've been thinking about that. And the cloud sharing came to mind, not because it's super technical or super complicated, but it's definitely a shift in how we're asking our business users to think about and work with their data. I actually have a training section that I do every time I train, which is quite a bit, which is a ton of fun for me. And it's all about, okay, we've got stuff in SharePoint, we're using Teams, we're using OneDrive. Now what? What's the difference? Because if we don't change how we work and embrace the idea of sharing from the cloud, centralized storage, all that good stuff, we're not truly going to be taking advantage and reaping the benefit of moving into SharePoint or SharePoint Online. A lot of this can actually apply to on-prem as well. So if you're not in SharePoint Online yet, don't despair. There's still some good stuff we can take away from this. All right, cloud basics. Oh, and if any of you are new to the Joy of SharePoint webinar, please don't be hesitant, don't be shy. There's a question section. Please feel free. If you have a question, jump in there, type it out. If you have an observation, a story, a past experience, or just a fun fact, please do feel free to put that in the question section. It is just me on the webinar today, so I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on slides, on the questions. If you happen to throw it in chat by mistake, I'm trying to keep an eye out on that as well. I am on my beloved Surface, so I'm one screen today, so it's going to be a challenge, but we got this because we're awesome, folks. Okay, so cloud basics. This is a little fuzzy sometimes for folks that maybe aren't as used to thinking about what cloud storage is, or SharePoint Online, OneDrive being, you know, off-site storage. Basically, what that means is that content is not stored locally. The storage is internet-based. That means from our perspective, anywhere we can get to the internet, whether it's cellular signal from a mobile device or Wi-Fi or even if we just want to hardwire in through our Ethernet port, we can get to our content. My example for this is typically, since I travel a lot, if heaven forbid, I were to leave my Surface in the back pocket of the airplane, Stephanie, Mark, if you're listening, I promise I would never do that. I could go to my hotel, log in to the Windows ME machine that hasn't been updated in 20 years, grind my way to the interwebs, log into Office 365 as me, and all my stuff is there. Rock on. So internet-based storage. So really what we're saying is there really is no cloud. It's just somebody else's server. The content still is on a server. It's still on a SharePoint farm. It is still got SQL in the background doing its thing. It's just not on premises where we can go touch it. The cool thing about that, especially when I think back to my SharePoint farm admin days, is time is freed up. Now, as a SharePoint administrator, I'm not doing care and feeding of the farm. I'm not running patches. Actually, fun fact, the reason I went to Twitter in 2009 is because that is when I officially became a SharePoint farm admin. And I followed every SharePoint account I could find. And this is still a good thing to do today. This is the way, guys. And I would watch people talk about when they applied their patches, cumulative updates, all that fun stuff. And I would wait for the suffering to end. I would wait for people to stop complaining about it, and then I would go apply the patch because the kinks got worked out. So our time's taken away from doing all that care and feeding and maintenance and upgrades and patches, and we focus it on improving the experience for the business, helping businesses identify processes that could be improved, streamlined, and automated. Application functionality. Oh, you need a custom form? Hey, let's take some time and talk about it, because I'm not focused on managing my servers anymore. I've offloaded that to Microsoft. I let them handle it. Pros and cons, because I'm a control freak, so there are times it really irritates me if I can't go kick off a crawl. But the benefits far, far outweigh that. So now we get to do all the fun stuff. So when we talk about the cloud and SharePoint Online and all that good stuff, we're really talking about the Microsoft 365 collaboration suite. And I'll admit, this threw me for a loop when that one day I went and I logged into my admin portal and it didn't say Office 365 anymore. It said Microsoft 365. Oh, good. Microsoft renamed something. Yay. If any of you are Microsoft employees, could you please tell whoever's in charge of naming things to kind of just chill for a minute? And also buy a thesaurus, but that's a conversation for another day. So Office 365, when we start talking about that, we're talking about the collaboration applications in Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and the Office applications, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook. Anyone still use Publisher? I think that's actually still out there. But SharePoint remains the heart of our intranet and the heart of our document storage. If I have content that I'm accessing in Teams, SharePoint's actually holding and managing that for me. If I've got content in OneDrive, because remember, OneDrive for one person, my stuff goes in my OneDrive, and I can choose to share that out to a group of people. If it's my whole department, that probably needs to be on the SharePoint site, not my OneDrive. That's a conversation for another day. But if you ever go to OneDrive online and you look at your URL, you'll see SharePoint's there. SharePoint is the heart and soul of all of our document management inside of Office 365. So that's really where we start talking about moving content to the cloud, talking about putting it in SharePoint, even if we're going to access it OneDrive, Teams. So why go to the trouble? And I'll tell you, it's work. It's hard work. Stephen Wilson, one of my colleagues, co-workers, he and I probably work together the most on projects. Where you see one of us, the other one is close by. We've really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears the last year into easing the pain points of moving from SharePoint on-prem or a file share or Google Docs. We actually have some folks that we help get stuff out of a combination of all of those things, put it in SharePoint Online. It's bumpy at first. If you're coming from SharePoint on-prem and your home pages for your sites are in the pages library, not the site pages, it's a little complicated. Things don't really come over a one-to-one relationship. We have to work with our users to say, okay, we know you're used to going to the shortcut on your desktop. We know you've got your favorite in your browser for your current on-prem SharePoint site, but we're going to be creating a new place for you. Being the optimist I am, I tend to look at this as you get to do this. Woohoo! Because now we can talk about the things that have frustrated our users. You know, I go to this library and it's all these folders. It's literally a conversation I had in Michigan this week. And it's just, you have to know the exact path of the folder structure to find the document. And to be able to do that, you kind of have to read the mind of the person that created the folder structure. That's a problem. That's, you know, the last statistic I read is about 30% of our day at work is spent looking for stuff, trying to figure out how people were thinking when they put stuff where it is today. So now we have the opportunity to map that content to a new location, clean it up, flatten those library architectures. Hallelujah. Get rid of the folders if we can. Please, please, please. Conversation for another day. We may have to redo permissions because typically if we're looking at a very folder-rich environment in our lists and libraries, we're probably looking at a lot of broken permissions. If we had the situation where we have a top-level site with a lot of subsites and sub-subsites and sub-sub-subsites, probably looking at a lot of broken permissions. So this is an opportunity to fix that because usually it's tangled up and it's knotted, and people are more than just a little bit frustrated. When someone sends them a link, they click it and access is denied. So we have the opportunity to make that better. Change slows us down a little bit because we have to learn the new way, but we can get a lot out of it. We can use it as an opportunity to identify the old stuff that maybe one day we might need to reference, but more than likely we can just leave it on the file share as read-only, just in case. Some folks, they'll even take it and burn it on a DVD or a thumb drive, give it to the department and say, here's the hard copy of your archive. If you need it, you can get to it. Yeah, totally up to the organization. And we have the chance to teach people, this is, I think, the hardest part, teach people a new way of thinking about and working with their stuff. I used the phrase on site with my client this week about, you know, people get upset when you move their cheese. He kind of made this face, and I thought, oh, did he not like that? He got real serious, got up away from the table and walked away. I thought, oh, shoot, what did I say? And he pulled a book off his bookshelf, and it's the book about who moved my cheese. So it's a thing. If you haven't read the book, I encourage you to. But we have to teach people how to do things a new way, which then begs the question, why do it? You know, why put the blood, sweat, and the tears and the frustration and maybe slow a few business processes down for a short period of time? Well, my top 3 reasons are to start working from a single version of the truth. And if you've been in the SharePoint world for a long time, this is not the first time you're hearing that phrase. Anytime I'm doing deployment planning workshops or training, I probably say that phrase a dozen times a day. Easy, because it's the goal, a single version of the truth in our own world. That meant we were paying less for storage because we didn't have a gazillion copies of the same document. Today, it's just making life better. I know when I go to a SharePoint document library or I go to files in Teams and I click on a document, that is the truth. That's the most recent, the most updated, most accurate piece of information. If that makes you a little nervous, keep in mind SharePoint's got all kinds of features that can help make sure the right people see the right things. So if we're talking about policies and procedures, we can absolutely update and edit and manage new versions of policies and procedures. But the folks that need to come in and read it and see what is actually the official today version, not what we're working on for tomorrow, they still just see the last published version of the document. So there's security there. These aren't really in particular order, but number 2 here, anytime, any place, anywhere. If I can get to the internet, I can get to my stuff. Improve security. And this may cause you to pause for a moment, because the idea of going to the cloud being more secure seems a little counterintuitive, right? Because now as IT, we're letting go of the control. I can't go put my arms around my server and know my stuff is there. I am trusting my content to live on somebody else's server. I've got the link to an article here from Microsoft. I've got it on another slide too. These slides will be made public to you. I encourage you to read it. It is secure. And I've got a few bullet points from that article we'll look at in just a few minutes. Microsoft has whole teams and departments, a workforce dedicated to nothing but the security of the content we're trusting them with. They have a lot invested with it, and they're not just looking at keeping it safe today. They're at conferences and summits and doing research to make sure that in 5 years from now, they're ready to stay compliant with the pace of security. It's really impressive. Okay. This is one of my training slides. I pulled it out of my presentation and put it in here. It's based on an actual phrase that someone said when I was training. They're like, okay, so let's just say I do this and I go put my stuff in SharePoint. Now what? What's the big deal? It was in SharePoint before, it was in SharePoint 2010, now it's in SharePoint Online. Now what? Right? It was kind of like, impress me. Okay, I'll try. First thing, now, stop emailing that spreadsheet and all that other stuff. And when I say emailing, stop creating attachments to the stuff that's in SharePoint and sending it around to the whole wide world. Email is a fantastic communication tool when working with our colleagues, maybe vendors, clients, whatever it may be, whoever it may be, that are outside of the organization. But if we're utilizing Office 365, we've got Teams now where we can have that internal communication. And now inside of the organization, I can just go to my list or library and click that share button. I've got highlighted the toolbar, share. There is a share in line with your item. And if you hover on it now in SharePoint Online, you get this little call out that opens up and there's a share button there. And you can click it and you can share it. You send the link to the person that you want to open it. Now let's just take a break. We'll chat about that for a second. If I am a member on a site and I don't have access, well, what that means is I don't have the access to change permissions. I can't go send this to Bob, who's not part of this site. If I click share and put Bob's name in, the owner will get an email that says, hey, Joy really wants to share this article, this focus group questionnaire with Bob. Do you want to allow that? And the site owner has the chance to say, oh yeah, Bob absolutely needs to see this document. Or ain't no way, Bob, this is not Bob's job, and can deny it. And then that gives the owner, we hope, a chance to go sit down and talk with Joy and say, well, I saw you wanted to share that with Bob. You know, he's not part of this team and he doesn't have permission to the site. What's the need, right? Is there a legitimate business need that Bob needs to see this? If yes, does that mean that this document should be somewhere more public? Or maybe Bob was supposed to be a part of the team and he just got left out, right? We have the opportunity to have a conversation. We don't always feel that's a good opportunity in IT. Sometimes we just want people to take what we give them and leave us alone. It's a new age, right? It's time to put on the kinder, gentler face of IT, work with our users and help them out, help them use the tools we've given them. And in the long run, we reduce our help desk tickets. So I'll stop preaching on that. So inside of the organization, we can share. Of course, from OneDrive, I can share with anybody I want to, because that's not confidential business data in OneDrive. That should be in SharePoint. It's just my personal work stuff that I keep inside of OneDrive. So remember, we're going to play a math game, because every time I send an email attachment, I am creating a copy, duplicating that item. So let's pretend. I do this in deployment planning and training, both, depending on my audience. Let's pretend that I have one document. Maybe it's in SharePoint, maybe it's on my desktop, doesn't matter. But I have this one document and it only exists in this one place. I guess it does matter, because if it's in SharePoint and I download it, I've just made an additional copy. So let's do it that way. It's in SharePoint. I'm going to download a copy to my desktop and save it. So now I've got 2 copies of it. And I want to send this to Stephen. I want Stephen to read it and look at it and see it. Okay, so now it's on my desktop, it's in SharePoint, and now it's in my sent items. And now it's in Stephen's inbox. I'm up to 4 copies. Stephen opens it, he's like, oh, I need to work on this. So he saves a copy to his desktop, 5 copies. All right, he makes his changes, he attaches it to an email, and he sends it to me. So now it's in his sent items, that's 6 copies. It's my inbox, that's 7 copies. I open it up and I save it as a new copy, that's 8. And I take his copies and I merge it with the original one on my desktop, that I think I'm up to 9, because I duplicated one document as an email attachment one time, 9 copies. Does it ever just happen one time? Of course not, because we may share it with a few people on the team. That document may go through lots and lots and lots of edits and revisions. And if we're working on it in that offline fashion, some poor soul has to take all those separate edits and combine them together. We've really started to create a lot of copies of that one document. And now, heaven help us when it's time to go find the most up-to-date, correct version of that document. And the sad thing is, if we've got some people using SharePoint the SharePointy way, and they've got metadata, and they've been using versioning, but I decide to take it offline because that's what I'm used to, or maybe I've not really been taught that I can just open it and work on it from SharePoint. When I go take mine and Stephen's work and maybe I go upload that back into SharePoint, I just overwrote what was there. I blew away the metadata and I blew away the versions. So there's a lot to be gained through taking people through the new way of doing things. In this new way, we bring people into the data instead of sending the data out to people. Everything we put in SharePoint gets a link. Teams, OneDrive, they all have links, and I can share those links instead of sharing individual copies of the document. Now, this is a Joy of SharePoint opinion. There's my disclaimer. But I truly do believe Teams is better than email for our internal communication. Sometimes external too. It just depends on if we're going to let external folks have a place inside of our Teams environment, which we can do using guest access if your IT and security organization allow it. But now I can take the stuff I work on internally, put it in a team, have channels to organize the initiatives that me and my team work on together, and we just have those conversations in Teams. How many times have you ever been drafting an email and you think, okay, I need to put Bob, Mike, Stephen, me, Stephanie, okay, all these 7, 8 people, put it on the email thread and send it out. And it's like the second you hit send, you go, oh crap, I left Terrence off the email thread. So you go forward it. Hey, looping you in. Sorry, I forgot you. Okay, cool. All right, job's done. So Terrence starts replying on the one you sent to him, and everybody else is replying to the one you sent to all of them. And now we have what's called a forked email thread. So everybody else is seeing what they're saying, but Terrence isn't, and they're not seeing what Terrence is saying, and I'm in the middle. If I start utilizing Teams to be my point of communication, that's gone. Because everybody that's working on this thing that's part of the team is in Teams. It all happens there and everybody sees it. At Paid Group, I would say we have reduced our internal emails, by about, I'm going to say 85%, because we have our conversation in the appropriate teams and channels. So if I need to know something about a client, I go to that team and I go to the appropriate channel. We do a team per client and a channel per phase of their project. So it's super easy to know where to go. The only time it's not super easy is if it's a document that could apply to maybe a couple of different phases. But then I just go to SharePoint, or I go to Teams in the Files tab, open that in SharePoint and get rid of the folders. I don't delete them. I just create a view that doesn't have them, and all my stuff's right there. Bonus, every attachment I put inside of Teams, every file I drop, it's automatically going to the right place in SharePoint. Boom, job done. And we all have access to it. So anytime, any place, anywhere. It's from His Girl Friday, Cary Grant movie. Love that movie. If you have Wi-Fi or cellular signal, once your data is in the cloud, is in Office 365, you can get to it. Fun fact, sometimes our organization restricts the ability to use any device to get to content. That is a bummer. It kind of stinks. I'm very happy my company doesn't do that, but the fact remains, if my cell phone, if my computer were to fall into the ocean or get left on a plane or in the back of a Uber or Lyft, the data's not gone. It's not tied to that machine. It's still in the cloud. So even if I'm restricted to company approved devices only, as soon as I have access to one of those, I have all of my stuff. That's a huge deal. That is a huge deal for business continuity. All right. Oh, so I have a question here. Hi, we're using Teams and channels a lot. How do you deal with getting an overview per assigned person when their tasks span channels? When their tasks span channels, I would go to Planner. If you use Planner to manage those tasks, the whole team, I use my Hub Planner, but that's only my tasks. So let me ponder. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee because that's what coffee's for. It's my thinking juice. You can't switch to other people. I'm gonna ponder that because I know, so Holly is my project manager and she assigns different tasks to all of us. And typically I can go to that Teams planner plan and see what all's going on. But stick with me, Sam, that's something I'm gonna think about and see if I can't get you a good answer for that. Oh yeah, you're absolutely welcome. And thanks for being here. Okay, so security in the cloud. Some of you may know if you've been on other webinars, I came into SharePoint from the defense industry 12 years ago. I aged just a little bit saying that number. The idea of moving to SharePoint Online was ludicrous. We're not going to put our proposals with the military in the cloud. Are you out of your mind? And even when, let me think back now, 2012, I think is when the push really started. You could see Microsoft really online, 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 online. Still sitting there going, no, I was in Huntsville, Alabama. If you said move your data to the cloud to anyone in Huntsville, Alabama, you know, government town, military town, hard no, not going to do that. So Microsoft had to put some things in place and earn trust in order for that to happen. Now when you sit and you look at the security and compliance capabilities in the cloud, you just look at what they've done. So your content in Office 365 is encrypted both when it's at rest and when it's in motion. So when it's sitting on the servers in the data centers, or when I ask for it to come to my iPhone, it's encrypted. If it's sitting on the servers, it's encrypted at the disk level. And I'll tell you this too, so only a few people at Microsoft can actually go to any given data center, any given time, get in there and start poking at the servers. Even if someone was feeling a little frisky and they wanted to go in there, grab a server and run away with it, they would not be able to get whole documents off of that server because of the way content is stored. It's only pieces and parts. The network and identities on the network are isolated from Microsoft's actual corporate network. So there's separation there of just Microsoft stuff and then our content that is in the cloud on their servers that spans data centers. And they're actually out there all the time analyzing. They've got automated and manual processes scanning for threats. And I didn't know this until here recently. They actually have a bounty program. So if a citizen is out there and they see a threat and they notify Microsoft about it and Microsoft vets it and it's a legit threat, that person gets a bounty, right? They get paid, just like the Mandalorian, right? They're bounty hunters. How cool is that? So here's that link again on this slide where you can go and read the whole document of how Microsoft keeps our content safe. It's definitely worth the read. If you're trying to prove your case to your company that your data will be safe in the cloud, it's a great article for you. I promise it's well worth your time. Okay, so we've talked about all this great stuff and it's really awesome. So what is it really? Really sharing and working from the cloud is using those features inside of Office 365 to work from that single version of the truth, not saving copies to our file shares or Google Docs or whatever the case may be, your desktop. Though I will say if your company has implemented syncing your C drive to OneDrive, rock on. Fantastic move. We have to break the habit of going to email to share attachments. So here's a question to put this to you if we're just still not really convinced. If we're downloading copies of documents and sharing them with people, why don't those people just already have access to it in SharePoint? Because if I make a copy of a document, I send it to someone, they now have read access to that document. Heaven forbid they print it out and put it on the wall of their cube or their office, or they save it on their desktop, and now that's the piece of information they refer to from here on out. Because the minute that piece of information is separated from its source in SharePoint, in my mind, it's obsolete. It will never be updated. The minute a change is made, it's out of date. It's wrong. So now we have to get people to kind of change how they think about it. I did a series of training classes across Missouri this summer. And one of the things we talked about is you never trust a set of work instructions that's printed off and handed to you, ever. And they're 100% behind it because people could die if they start working off a wrong set of information, right? If it's attached in an email and sent to you, and this is something you use to do your job, it's an important piece of information, a policy, a procedure, a work instruction, you can't trust it. What if the email gets stuck when they send out the policy update and everybody gets their own copy of it? What if somebody's email goes to spam or the junk filter, or it sits in the sender's outbox and they don't catch it, right? People aren't being made aware of it. Or what if you're like me and you just have a lot of unread emails because you've been on travel this week and you just don't see it in time? So we want to stop working off of email attachments or copies and filing away our own little cubby hole stuff so I can go get to it when I need to because I know where it is because I put it there. If it's hard to find stuff, it's time to remap it. It's time to organize it. It's time to put quick links on the homepage. It's time to put tabs inside of Teams to make it easy to get there. And it does mean we have to break old habits and form new ones. It requires changing the culture of the organization, and it requires time. It requires communication as well. Not just internally, but we can also utilize this cloud functionality externally as well. With external sharing in SharePoint, we can go set up a site collection where I can invite external folks in just by inviting their email address. It doesn't have to be an Office 365 or a Microsoft email address. I've invited, so my husband has an sbcglobal.net email address. Okay, right, we're not judging. It's fine. I know a lot of people that still have that original email address from when they set up their internet, in the 90s. I wrote a blog on external sharing to show you could do it. I invited that email address in, right? It could be Yahoo, it could be Google, it doesn't matter. You can invite them in and they set up their own username and password. Woohoo! IT does not have to manage the credentials for that person. That said, if they ever start acting a little sketchy, or the project has ended, or it's time for their access to go away, IT can absolutely go kick them out and turn off their access. In Teams, we can invite people in as guests. They have guest access, which means they can chat and are considered a member in the fact that they can open the documents in the Files tab and edit them and work on them, right? So we can seamlessly collaborate with our clients, our vendors, and our external colleagues. With OneDrive, so if I've got a training presentation I want to send to a client, have them kind of look at it, vet it, do whatever they want to do, I typically do that from OneDrive. And I go share it with them. And once I share it, I give them the ability to edit, because I don't need them wasting their time going, hi, Joy, we really like slide 3, but we wish you would change it to da-da-da-da-da-da. Right? Just do it. You can do whatever you want to do, as much or as little as you want to. We work on that same document together, which saves a ton of time and not having to go aggregate all those separate edits individually. Hallelujah. We can automate review and approval processes. Maybe you're going back and forth on a contract with someone outside of your organization. Rock on. Have that on an external site. Use some flow, even if it's just that built-in request sign off. Let them do it, right? Work together on that single version of the truth. So from the user perspective, as a business user, I'm busy and I've got this old job that I have to do, and SharePoint was not originally part of that job. What's in it for me? This is like the why should I care portion. Wouldn't it be nice to know when you go to your library and you click on that document, that is the correct one? You don't have to ask anyone to send it to you. You don't have to go dig through, 7, 8, 10 levels of folders and hope you don't just click into an empty one. When you search is actually bringing you meaningful results. And remember, with search, single keyword search is the least efficient. Use your quotes and search on phrases, right? There are lots of ways to get search to actually bring you more meaningful results. But one big way is just not to have a lot of clutter in there to begin with. We reduce time spent on incorrect information. I know there have been times when I followed a policy that I thought was correct and I did a job only to find out, oh, no, we don't do it that way anymore. Here, let me forward you the new instructions. Insert eye roll here. And from an IT perspective, our business users may not care about the on-prem side of the world, but we can reduce, and in some cases, if this is the way your organization wants to go, eliminate that on-prem storage, reduce costs. And if we're going to talk about cost reduction, then we've got all the features and capabilities that are built into SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive that includes calendaring and meetings and callings. We can start to reduce applications that we don't need anymore. There's a lot to it. It's definitely an onion. This is my favorite. Bye-bye, VPN. If you're like me and you're on the road a lot, man, I remember my early days of travel. 2009, maybe 10. I don't know. I started doing a lot of traveling. I was on the road every other week for the span of a week. And there was this one hotel just outside of Los Alamos, New Mexico. It was the closest one. It's a cute little spot. VPN would only stay connected for about 3 minutes at a time. So it was really hard to do stuff in 3-minute increments. And I stayed at that place like 5 different times. And every time it was the same experience. Or if you ever needed to try to jump on, anybody remember live meeting? A live meeting call went on airport or hotel Wi-Fi, you give it up. It wasn't happening. VPN never works particularly well. Hotels or airports, right? Because that infrastructure is not meant to support it, and VPN needs a pretty beefy connection. Goodbye, VPN. Does that mean there's not security associated with getting to that content? No. Again, we've got the encryption that's in place from Microsoft, and we have multi-factor authentication turned on. So not only do I have to log in with a username and password, which uses my face recognition now, I then get a code. And with that code, I'm proving not only is it me putting in my username and password, but I got the text I'm putting in the code. So a lot of security still there. All right. Look at this. You guys are going to get some time back in your lunch because this is the last slide. So bottom line, there is a great return of investment, but, and this is a sentence I stole from a previous slide, it does require the culture of the organization to change, and it does not happen overnight. New habits. Never trust that an emailed attachment or a printed document is the latest, greatest, correct, and accurate version of that document. Break that habit. When I was in Michigan, one guy was like, well, why do you prefer going to your company folder rather than the SharePoint site that was sent for you? He's like, well, that's where the shortcut is on my desktop. Okay, right? That's his muscle memory. He goes to the shortcut on his desktop. Can we put a shortcut on your desktop to SharePoint? Yes, we can. Are we going to map it as a network drive? No, we're not. It's terrifying. If you're doing that, don't do it. It requires informing and educating folks on the new way of doing things. Communicate, communicate, communicate. If you've not made the move to SharePoint Online yet, let them know it's coming. Ease people into it. Have conversations. Show them, hey, this is what's going to change, but this is why it's going to be okay. This is what's not going to change, right? You're still going to have your stuff. It's just going to be in a different place. We're going to help you, and it's going to be better. And if it's not better, we're going to help you make it better. IT and upper management, and not just upper management, management in general, we really have to lean on these folks to lead by example. If you're the director of IT and you're still emailing attachments to folks, knock it off, send the link, right? Lead by example. Start utilizing Teams into your internal communication inside of your department team instead of doing that email blast. Small changes, and it will really start to cause a larger ripple throughout the organization when they see that you're not just preaching it, but you're practicing it too. We have to lead by example because this is the way, right? That's how we get that change to come about. All right. Guys and gals, cats and kittens, friends and enemies, as I heard someone say once, cracked me up. That's what I had to talk with you all today about. I am working on a follow-up blog that will have a lot of this information in it as well. But I appreciate you joining with me today. If we covered anything in this webinar that you might have some other questions about or wanted to dive in deeper, I've got my contact information here, Twitter, Instagram, @Joy of SharePoint, got my email address here as well. And of course, these slides will be made available once the recording's done. We'll be tweeting that out. I think Stacy will send it out in an email as well. But I'm going to hang around for a few minutes. If you want to hang out and ask any questions or chat, I will be here. And you're getting back about 15 or 16 minutes to actually eat some lunch on your lunch break. If you're in San Diego area, I hope to see you at SharePoint Saturday tomorrow. Next weekend, I will be at SharePoint Saturday in St. Louis. So any of my St. Louis folks, I hope you'll be there. Everybody have a great day.